In the bustling halls of one of the universities in Oyo State, Neula was a name that danced her lips with his. She was the kind of girl who made friends in seconds, the type whose laughter lit up corridors and whose presence turned any dull moments into a festival. She was the embodiment of life of the party, fun, lively and unapologetically social. With her kinky afro, colorful Ankara fabrics, and a backpack always slung on one shoulder, Noella never missed a lecture. She managed her grades well despite her lively spirits, and everyone in the Faculty of Arts knew her, if not by name, then by her infectious smile and bold, sunny energy. One bright Thursday afternoon, a department announced they would be organizing a cultural symposium, and the lecturers called for student volunteers. Without hesitation, Noella raised her hand. She joined the planning committee, handling coordination with flair. Her enthusiasm rubbed off on others. She helped choose the MCs, arranged chairs, coordinated rehearsals, and even designed the flyers. Her presence at meetings, her charisma, and how effortlessly she got things done made her stand out. Lecturers and students alike began to notice her beyond the usual class setting, and Noella wasn't just the fun girl who lit up lecture rooms, she was also the girl who got things done. It wasn't long before her friends, Tommy, Sandra, and Ijoma started teasing her. "Na so person go become popular and forget her girl so," Tommy had said, elbowing her playfully as they walked to their favorite amala spot near the student center. One lazy Friday, after lectures, the girls had gone to grab lunch at the campus eatery. Three of them, Tommy and Ijeoma, including Noella, excused themselves to the restroom, leaving Sandra behind with Tommy's half-eaten moi moi and a bottle of Coke. As Sandra waited, a tall, quiet guy walked up to her table. He looked around briefly before leaning in and saying, "Please, give this to Noella." He dropped a neatly folded note, smiled awkwardly, and left before Sandra could say a word. Sandra didn't wait till they all got back to the hostel. She bursted into laughter right there and then, waving the note in the air like a flag of victory and then shouting, "Noella, Noella, Josh has finally entered the chat oh." The rest of the girls came running back, curious, and they all giggled as Noella opened the notes. Inside was a simple message. "You were amazing at the event. I've seen you around for a while and I really admire your energy. If you are okay with it, I would like to know you better. Josh." Now, Josh wasn't just some random guy. He was a final year student in the Department of Computer Science. Known for being quiet, intelligent, and rarely seen outside class, Josh wasn't the type to approach people, let alone drop handwritten notes. But Noella's laughter and charisma had pulled him in during the event. She had danced on stage in a cultural display and helped coordinate behind the scenes. Josh had watched her move around with grace, commanding attention without even trying. He asked one or two people for her name, and the moment he found a chance to make his move, he did it in the only way he knew how to, softly and quietly. Josh eventually reached out to Noella on WhatsApp a few days after the note incident. She was surprised at first, wondering how he got her number, only to remember that this is actually a university and anyone could get your number with just asking a few friends of yours. It started with casual greetings, complimenting her effort at the symposium and asking about her classes. Their conversations flowed easily. Josh was a good listener, surprisingly funny, and had a calm aura that balanced Noella's vibrant energy. Days turned into weeks and their chats grew longer. They discussed everything from campus gist to their childhoods. Noella didn't actually think much of their chats. To her, it was just friendly banter and chats until the tone began to change. Josh became more expressive with his words. He would text her randomly with sweet messages, sometimes sending her early morning quotes like, "Just seeing you brightens my day," or "Your smile is the first thing that comes to mind when I wake up." It started subtly, but soon it became clear. Josh was falling very, very fast indeed. He soon began showing up on campus even when he didn't have lectures. Sometimes he would be seated under the mango tree close to our department, pretending to be reading but waiting for a glimpse of her. There were days when Neula would receive a text saying, "Your lunch has been paid for at XYZ food canteen," only to find out that her favorite meal, ofada rice and ofada sauce or ayamashi sauce, had been mysteriously covered. Josh never claimed the gesture, but it was clear to Neula where it was coming from. Josh's feelings grew deeper, and he finally found the courage to say it. One afternoon, he called her out to the quiet spot near the Art Theatre. His voice trembled a bit as he spoke, but his words were steady. "Neula, I know this might sound sudden, but I've liked you for a while. It's not just your beauty, but your energy, your kindness, and the way you carry yourself. I think about you a lot, more than I probably should. I don't want to be just your friend. I want more." He looked into her eyes with the sincerity of someone who had carried the weight and the words for too long. "I've never felt this way before," he added softly. Neula was indeed touched, but sadly she didn't feel the same. She appreciated Josh's kindness, his attention, and the quiet way he cared, but she didn't have romantic feelings for him. She sat with him on the bench and responded gently, "Josh, you are a good guy. Truly you are. You've been really kind to me and I really value our friendship. But I don't think I feel the same way. I just want to be honest with you. I hope we can still talk. Maybe not as much, but still be cool." She tried to soften the blow with a smile, but she could see the way his eyes dropped and how he paused before saying, "It's okay, I understand." There and there, she knew Josh didn't. Days after their conversation, something shifted. Noella began to notice Josh more than ever, not because she wanted to, but because it seemed like he was everywhere. One afternoon, she bumped into him near the Faculty of Education, a place she rarely visited. The next week, she saw him loitering by the Senate building. She shrugged it off at first, but when it kept happening at the library gates, the palm wine joint beside the student center, even by the faculty's mosque, it began to bother her. How was this even happening? She wondered. They were from different departments. Their timetables didn't align. There was no reason for him to be in those places except her. But why was he always there, especially at the same time as when she was there? Despite Nuela's polite rejection, Josh on his part didn't let go. In fact, his messages on WhatsApp began to take a different turn. At first, he marks them as jokes, innuendos buried under emojis and just kidding remarks. But soon, they became more direct and unsettling. He would text late at night with lines like, "I dreamt about you last week. You were in my bed," followed by a wink emoji. Nuela constantly told him to stop, replying with sharp warnings. "Josh, this isn't funny. Please stop. Or I don't like these kinds of messages." But it was as though her words fueled him the more. Each day, the chat grew more suggestive and disturbing. Unable to keep enduring it, Nuela gathered screenshots and went to report the matter, first to the Faculty Student Affairs Office and then to Josh's department. She explained everything, how he kept harassing her online, how he lingered around her building, and how she no longer felt safe. But to Nuela's surprise, the responses was lukewarm. Some staffs even asked, "Are you sure you didn't give him green lights?" Others frowned at the chats, but pointed out that many had already been deleted. However, they cautioned Josh quietly and told him to face his studies, then dismissed it as a typical campus crush gone too far. No formal warning and no serious action taken. As the days went by, things took a terrifying turn. Josh no longer texts as often, but he started properly stalking her. One afternoon, Nuela was walking to her faculty when a message popped up on her phone. It was a photo of her taken from behind just minutes earlier. That same night, she received another picture, this time of her hostel window, clearly shot from outside. Even during a quick visit to a salon off campus a few days later, another message came in. "That red top suits you." Neula wondered how Josh knew her movements. Her location wasn't on. Her friends most times don't even know where she goes to and what time. How did Josh always know? Neula became terrified. But the most terrifying moment for her came when she traveled out of town with a male friend to relax and clear her head. They went to a quiet restaurant 1 city away. Hours later, her phone burst. It was a picture of her and the guy seated at the restaurant table. Her blood ran cold. That meant Josh had followed her again, all the way there. She looked around her environment but couldn't see Josh. She became very, very frightened, livid, and hurriedly told the guy they needed to go back to Ibadan the next day. As the days went by, Nuela became paralyzed with fear. Her life was no longer her own. Every time she stepped outside, a wave of anxiety crashed over her. She couldn't walk 5 steps without glancing over her shoulder, sometimes 3 to 4 times within a minute. Her heart would race at the sound of hurried footsteps behind her, even if it was just another student passing by. She began avoiding open spaces. No more sitting under trees between classes. No more visiting the canteen to laugh and eat with her friends. The once lively girl who danced during hostel events and always had a reason to smile now kept to herself. Always in a hurry, always on the edge. Back in her hostel room, Nuela would lock the door, then unlock and relock it just to be sure it was truly locked. Sometimes she would press the door hard with her palms, her ear against it, listening for any movement or sudden movement outside. She stopped playing music. She stopped dancing. She no longer joined her friends at their usual hangouts or for late night discussions. The things that made her Nuela, her laughter, her jokes, her carefree joy, all began to fade. Josh's presence wasn't just physical anymore, it was in her mind, her fears, and her silence. She was living in survival mode every single day. Nuela knew she was trapped, not just by Josh's presence, but by the fear that he could show up anywhere and at any time. Eventually, as the days went by, Nuela stopped attending lectures entirely. Her friends tried to ask questions, but she kept brushing them off with fake smiles. Back home, her parents noticed the change. Her voice over the phone sounded tired, her excitement about school dimmed. But when they asked Nuela, she lied. She told them she was focusing on assignments and just simply preparing for her tests. Now, you might wonder why Nuela actually lied. Well, Nuela's parents were strict old school folks. If they heard a boy was troubling her, they would assume she must have encouraged it. They had once said, "No man follows a woman around if she doesn't give him a reason." So for this reason, Nuela stayed quiet and afraid, sinking into the shadows of her own vibrant life. As the days continued to go by, Nuela couldn't take it anymore. The fear, the isolation, the sleepless nights, it all became too much. One quiet evening, while seated in a dimly lit room, she broke down in tears in front of her friends. With tears running down her face, she poured out everything to them. Josh's stalking, the images, the whispers of his presence, even in places she couldn't or shouldn't be. Upon hearing that, her friends were shocked, but more than that, they were angry. Without hesitation, they decided to take the matter to her parents themselves. When her parents were told about all that had been happening to Neula, the changes in their faces was instant. The strictness melted into raw concern as they saw how much damage had already been done to their once lively and bubbling daughter. They began to piece it together. Neula flinching at the sound of the doorbell, jumping when her phone rang, and even sometimes sitting on her bed staring at nothing. That was when they realized this had gone too far. Her father, a stern but just man, wasted no time. The next day, they filed a formal report with the police. Josh was invited to the station for questioning. When he got there, the officers asked him why he did what he did. But he lied that it was consented, and most of their conversations were in person, as Neula claimed her parents were strict and hence wasn't comfortable with chatting online on any social media platform. The officers, however, didn't believe him and warned him seriously, telling him that his behavior could lead to prison time if he was reported again. Meanwhile, Neula's school, after pressure from Neula's parents, friends and a few lecturers, launched an investigation. When they revealed Neula's remaining messages and dug into Josh's movements around campus, they had no choice but to suspend him for several months. But then, even after Josh was out of sight, Neula wasn't okay. The memory of his text, his eyes following her, the random pictures, everything haunted her. She couldn't sleep with the lights off. She hated the sound of WhatsApp notification. She started having panic attacks and couldn't bring herself to enter the lecture halls anymore. After many difficult conversations, her parents agreed to withdraw her from the university. They moved her to another school in a different state, far from where her pain lived, and she stayed with her mother's younger sister, who helped her to heal slowly through prayer, therapy, and love. Now, Neula's story reminds us that we must always speak out, protect one another, and create safer spaces for everyone, especially girls, ladies, or even women, be it on campus, outside campus, in the workplace, and beyond. In a world where no is often taken as a challenge rather than a boundary, it's important to respect people's choices, especially in matters of the heart. Obsession is not love, harassment is not affection, and silence from victims doesn't mean consent. Thank you for listening. If you found this story moving, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking tales that blends real-life lessons with gripping storytelling. Your support actually helps us to keep these stories alive. Thank you once again.